And now, our feature presentation.
The best
in the world
is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome.
All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin, Frazier, DKM, and Jay Cal.
Welcome to the Alliance Guys podcast, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. I'm Jay Cal, and with me is the beautiful and lovely Mr. DKM. Welcome to the show, everybody. What's going on, DK? What's on your mind?
Nothing. I refuse to have anything on my mind. It's been that type of year.
As you can see, the three-man show is currently a two-man show. Our boy Kevin Frazier will be on assignment tonight. That's what we say when someone's not feeling so good. Hopefully Kevin will be back next week, but yeah, just a kind of a last-minute thing. He wasn't able to join us, so we'll see him next week. But that doesn't.
Me proving I'm wrong.
Yeah. He got tired of the DK just grilling him and telling him how the world churns. So, man, it's been quite an interesting week for the National Wrestling Alliance. It's been quite an interesting week for the United Wrestling Network. Heck, it's been an interesting week for the Alliance Guys because we have a new T-shirt available. Just check out our Facebook or check out our Twitter. You can see the link available right now, and that's at the Alliance Blog. Again, all social media is at the Alliance Blog, Instagram, TikTok, and all that fun stuff. But without any further ado, let's talk a little bit about what happened this week, because I mean, in a 7-day period, we had the women's title defended at All Elite Wrestling's Full Gear Buy-In. We had the tag team titles defended and changed hands at Primetime Live. And of course, we're on the path to a new United Wrestling Network World Champion. So it's been kind of a fun week, kind of an interesting week. First of all, DK, did you see the Full Gear Buy-In match? Did you see Serena Deep defend her championship against Allison Kaye?
I did. I didn't get the pay-per-view, but since it was on the free YouTube channel where I watched it, I did watch the match, and I got even pretty lucky with timing. I opened up my laptop, opened up YouTube, and they were just starting the introductions.
Oh, you got right on the right time.
So, I mean, I got to watch the match and not see any of the other pitiful stuff that goes on there.
I don't think you missed a whole lot. I mean, what I saw was a lot of hype for the Eddie Kingston versus Jon Moxley match, and I'll be honest, because I don't follow AEW, I didn't even know that match was happening at the pay-per-view. So that was kind of cool to see the hype for that, but again, it wasn't something I was totally invested in.
The only reason I know is because I watch the Wrestle Talk guys. So they watch WWE and AEW, so I don't have to.
You know, when I first started doing this podcast, that was the slogan I came up with, and one of the members of the NWA said, you know, maybe you could change that, because I was like, we follow the NWA, so you don't have to. And they're like, well, we kind of want people to follow the NWA. I was like, oh, all right, fair enough. I my bad.
Well, I thought it was a slogan.
it was tongue in cheek. It was I don't know if I've ever shown you the flyer. DK, you probably saw it back in the day, but it was from the initial Championship Wrestling from Hollywood TV tapings at the Columbia Square Studio. I want to say back in 2008. And the match was like Daniel Bryan versus Adam Pearce. Actually, it was a tag team match. It was old school Oliver John and Adam Pearce versus Brent Albright and Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson. And just this really cool picture that I was able to snap while I was there. And then a couple of years later, when Pearce and Danielson wrestled at the NWA Legends Fan Fest, I sent it with Pearce to North Carolina, and he and Bryan Danielson signed it. So somewhere I have this really cool little memorabilia that has the 5-time NWA World Champion and the guy that should have been NWA World Champion on this little silly flyer that I made.
Hey, you need to find it and get it framed.
It's
I think you watched the match.
What's that?
You watched the match, the buy-in match?
Yeah, I did, and I'm going to be honest, man. I really think Serena Deeb is a lot better than what a lot of us kind of thought she was. When she came in and had her match with Thunder Rosa on AEW, I mean, I saw it and I thought, oh, that was good. Thunder Rosa got a really good match out of Serena Deeb. That's great, man. But I didn't expect anything more. Then when they had the second match on Primetime Live, I was like, wow, she really is good. And they put the belt on her, which means that, the front office buys into it. So I was like, hey, man, that is pretty freaking sweet. And I was like, okay, Serena Deeb she looks good. She had 2 good matches with Thunder Rosa. I'm buying in. But then when I see her against Allison Kaye, the former women's champion, and that match was really good, and it wasn't good just because Serena Deeb looked great, but it was good because Allison Kaye looked really good too. And to me, like, that's the makings of a good match, is when both winner and loser can look good even in victory and in defeat. And Allison Kaye looked great in that match, and I wouldn't be surprised if she's extended a contract with AEW. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if she showed up on Impact tonight.
Yeah, I really don't know what her future things are. And she'd probably be better off than back honestly than AEW, which even their most ardent fans are saying they are not doing much with the women's division. They basically have a women's match each show for about 5 to 10 minutes. But I thought that the actual match between Serena and Allison was a good one. I mean, I enjoyed watching it, pretty even balanced. And I'm learning that Allison Kaye is probably better than I originally thought she was. I was not her biggest fan when she first came to the NWA and won the title. I'd only seen her briefly on a couple of episodes of TNA Global Force Impact, when I was trying to see if it was going to be any good now that Dixie Carter was gone and Jeff Jarrett was back for those 2 weeks. And so I wasn't impressed with her there. I wasn't, her and Santana Garrett had an all right match. I didn't necessarily think it was a great match or even that good of a match. But her matches with Thunder Rosa and her match with Serena Deeb, proved that, she can have really good matches and she can make her opponent look really good. I think, you have to, for someone to look good in a match, both people have to be good.
Yes.
And so when you go, oh, Thunder Rosa looked really good, or Serena Deeb looked really good when they're wrestling Allison Kaye, part of that credit goes to Allison Kaye.
Yeah, for sure.
And, it was a good match. Serena Deeb retained, which I more or less expected, but there was a moment I thought maybe not.
Yeah.
And then, the best damn wrestler in wrestling today came out and made an appearance.
And she made an appearance the day after the Mission Pro Wrestling, where she wrestled Ray Lynn. And of course, I mean, it was a non-title match at that point. But it's kind of cool, but kind of sad to me at the same time that you've got 2 NWA title matches in 1 week, and not one of them on NWA programming. No YouTube channel, no nothing, no 10 pounds of gold or the Road of the Burke or anything like that. And I think that's pretty disappointing as a longtime NWA fan. I keep on prefacing my thoughts as I've been an NWA an apologist for close to 15 years now, and there are times when this NWA machine, whether it was during the Bob Trobich era, the Bruce Tharp era, or even now the Billy Corgan era, BBB, that's interesting, huh? That there's things that I've disagreed with, and there's things that I didn't like, and for such a long time, the NWA, this Lightning One era, I felt has made a lot of the right moves. I feel like getting hitched with Cody Rhodes and All In was very beneficial. I think working initially with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, getting Nick Aldis to China was very beneficial. And seeing that the NWA kind of grow through these connections and that landing that the NWA 70th anniversary pay-per-view that they co-promoted with Global Force Wrestling, and then the later they would have the Crockett Cup almost a year later, and then or about 8 months later, and then they jumped into NWA Power. It just really felt like things were moving in the right direction, and you're still seeing a lot of positive movement connected to the NWA, but unfortunately, it just doesn't feel like the NWA can capitalize on that. What are your thoughts on that, DK?
I'm going to make a small correction to what you just said.
Sure.
I don't think that some of the movement is NWA related in these last few days. I think a lot of it is NWA talent related.
That's fair.
And then I think Thunder Rose is the one that's pushing, that was pushing a lot of her action, her title defenses and her thing. I mean, to be a little bit on the bluntly honest side, NWA women's title on AEW has more to do with AEW wanting to book Thunder Rosa than the NWA Women's Championship. And so, we've seen every title but the world title change hands on Primetime Live, which is, Dave Marquez United Wrestling Network thing. Yeah, they're working together, but I don't think it's like a full-fledged partnership. I think it's a Dave Marquez product, and he's bringing in NWA talent to help fill out his roster of stuff. And sadly, we're not seeing quite the same thing from the world champion. I'm not really gonna. We've had our conversations in the past few weeks. I'm not, just going to go on and drone on about it. But it's time that the NWA figures out and starts doing something, anything. And if Nick Aldis doesn't want to defend the title, then it's time to find somebody who does. And I'm, just point blank. Everybody knows I'm a fan of Nick Aldis. Everybody knows I'm happy to have the title on him, happy to keep the title on him. Before COVID, I was going to say, I can go all from holding title for another couple of years. And uninterrupted. And if he gets out and starts defending again on a regular basis, I'll be back to that. But,
yeah.
Right now, even though his picture's still on the Primetime Live thing, he's not been on it. He's not been talked about. And I suppose there's behind-the-scenes stuff going on, because there always is. And, you know, I don't know what the issue is, but, yeah, I mean, NWA, do something. Do something.
I mean, in some regards, I feel like if I keep talking about it, maybe something will change, you know? And, like I said, for 15 years, DK, you're here with me. I mean, I could remember being on the NWA Wrestling.com message board, and you know, you, me, and about a handful of other guys, and back then we were questioning why the NWA was getting into a relationship with Total Nonstop Action, why the Jarretts were going to get to control the NWA World Title, and we used to joke around about how that was a bad move for the NWA, and or how it was going to be a good move depending on which side of the camp you were on, and it just feels like at this time in this place there was so much momentum going forward for the NWA up until January 27th. And again, I don't want to beat the dead horse. Yes, we know there's a global pandemic. We know that everybody in the world of professional wrestling has had to change their 20-year plans to accommodate what's going on today. But the pivot just is taking a lot longer than I would like it to. And we're not going to, I just spent about 20 minutes talking about this on the pre-party the other day, so I'm not going to beat the dead horse any further. But I just want to say, yes, it's time for something, some kind of NWA action. I do want to acknowledge the folks that are here in our chat room. I see a lot of our good friends. We've got Ryan Romano's in the house, Dave Scooby, The Nation Show's here. Welcome, guys. I think this might be the first time you've joined us, and I'm so happy you did. Joe's back. We got Woodland Goblin, Wrestling with the MMA, Sweet Vanilla. I know her. And, of course, Willie Bowen and everyone else. Thanks again for joining the show. This is, we just started going live about a month ago on Thursday nights. It's been a lot of fun for the three of us. In the last few weeks, we've interviewed Alexander Hammerstone. We've had Danny Lime. What's that?
Hammerstone.
That's right. We had Danny Limelight here last week, and I think we're gonna try to get a few more interviews here on Thursday nights. But just as it is, there was a pay-per-view on Tuesday, Primetime Live. There was some good matches on that show, and there was some fun stuff happening. And I don't like to stand on circumstances, so let's get to it, DK. Again, this show started off, there was no tech issues. They didn't start an hour early. That I'm sure that Dave Marquez and company were happy about that. Things were a little weird, though, and we noticed this in the pre-party that it was leaked that Davey Boy Smith Jr. said he was going to be there. And he said he was going to be wrestling for that, for the tournament on his tweet, but his match was actually the week before, and he got scrapped. So I mean, he was there, but he didn't wrestle. The tournament matches stayed intact, which I think is great. I was kind of worried that there was going to be some changes to it. Of course, we had another women's match that left a little bit to be desired. A tag team match turned into a 6-man tag match where they kept bragging about how that was history in the making. I thought that was kind of being a little overindulgent. I just thought it was a regular match, nothing really special associated with it. Of course, we had the NWA tag titles, but let's get to it. The show started off with Mr. No Days Off, Fred Rosser, taking on the Dirty Daddy, the Filthy Father, Chris Dickinson, and what was, I know I'm going to speak for DKM right here, the best match of the night. Fred Rosser has really impressed me. Like, I've known Fred Rosser for years. We've talked about it in the past. He was part of the NWA Reclaiming the Glory title tournament that crowned the NWA World Champion back in 2007 when Adam Pearce won the title in the finals against Brent Albright in Bayman, Puerto Rico. Back then, Fred Rosser was known as Fred Sampson. Actually had wrestled in the first round, defeating Glamour Boy Shane, losing in the second round to Brent Albright, who would go on to the finals. So, and then Fred Sampson stuck around for a while, wrestling in NWA Liberty States and wrestling for the NWA Pro Wrestling East, which was the East Coast version of what Dave Marquez was doing out here in Hollywood. He's been a great asset to the company. I know he's working with New Japan Strong. He had that match with James Storm and Chris Masters, and I thought that was a really fun match. He had the match with last week with Eric Redbeard that really didn't get kicked off the way it should have. And of course, they decided to go with a swerve and end the match in disqualification, which was to the benefit of Rosser, but of course, with the injury and everything else. I think it was smart going that route because they gave Sampson an out. They gave Rosser an out. They could say that, if he lost the match, he was injured. If he won the match, he's got the heart of a champion because he was able to battle through the injury. And despite the injured arm, the match itself was really good. DK, what were your thoughts on the match, and what did you think?
Well, I certainly agree that it was the best match of the night. And it was a really good match. It was a brutal match. Two big guys in there battling it out. And, that's what it felt like. It felt like a sporting event. It felt like an athletic competition. And so we had two guys in there who were doing all they could to win a match and advance to the finals in a world title tournament. Rosser, of course, had the disadvantage of having an arm injury. The announcers brought it up, and I kind of wish this had played more factor into it, but even though it had been 2 weeks ago, Dickinson had, suffered some knee trauma in his match with Peter Avalon, and I kind of wish that had kind of played a little more into this. They basically chose to ignore it. It also kind of showed the weirdness of having one match on 1 week and then the other 3 matches following. I didn't fully understand the logic in that. And but the match itself was a good match. And I will say I much prefer Dickinson in the competitive matches than I did where he does more talking. And so he's proven himself very, very good, very capable in the ring. So I'm enjoying that.
What I find most surprising about Chris Dickinson is that he's a guy that came from Game Changer Wrestling. And I don't have the highest opinion of Game Changer Wrestling, and maybe that's my bad, but I know that they have connections with Joey Janela. I know they do the blood sport with Josh Barnett, so there is some positive that I think comes from Game Changer Wrestling. But I've always thought of it was more or less like I have to
do something real quick.
Sure. Kind of in the same vein as since he's not here, we'll just transition to myself. Kind of in the same vein as Combat Zone Wrestling. So I really didn't think much of Game Changer Wrestling. I never really thought that very highly of that brand. But Chris Dickinson has been the complete athlete. Like, he's everything you want in one of your rising stars for your wrestling promotion. He's got the look, he can cut the promos, and he's great in the ring. And his ferocity, his tenacity in the ring, I mean, he is really the complete package. So watching him in the ring with Fred Rosser, I mean, depending on how long this thing goes and how Primetime Live continues to evolve, I think Fred Rosser could be one of their main guys down the road. But I also think that Chris Dickinson, win, lose, or draw when it comes to that United Wrestling Network World Championship, I think that they've got a great asset in that company. I hope Dave Marquez figures out a way to lock him up, to keep him on that roster, because he brings so much tenacity and intensity. And the best way I could say it, he's the complete package. DK, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I never saw him much in his early NWA days, so I didn't know a whole lot about him. Of course, when he went to the Northeast, I saw him some where, as is typical, he probably wasn't used to his full potential. And then, but since he's been out, and I've seen him wrestle, and he's obviously a talented, athlete. I don't think that can be questioned. And so, I would love to see more of him.
So, I mean, again, that was the best match on the card as far as we're concerned. I mean, we could wrap it up right now, but there's actually a couple more matches to talk about. So we'll go ahead and keep going through the rest of the card. But up next, we get the tag team match. Now, the backstage promo was kind of weird. Now, we know that 4 Minutes of Heat are the Defy Tag Team Champions. That's a championship that hasn't really been profiled yet on Primetime Live, which I don't have a problem with them showcasing more titles as long as the story makes sense. Then you have the Cash Money Brothers, who are talking about how much their money, but I mean, they've only won one match on Primetime Live. So it's kind of this weird dichotomy. You got these two tag teams. Obviously, both of these teams are looking to get into the win column so that they can face SoCal Distancing for an opportunity at the United Wrestling Network World Tag Team titles. And while all this is going on, Will Allday shows up. And Will Allday is the Reality of Wrestling Texas champion. And so, I mean, it's cool. Again, we're seeing another belt. We're seeing another set of champions. But it just seemed kind of odd. And then, out of nowhere, vaping in the back, you get this guy, Cam, who my only exposure to Cam is that he was out in Memphis as part of their spooktacular drive-in wrestling show that they did on Halloween. And I'd never seen him before. And I don't know if I'll ever see him again after. It's just a weird pairing, a weird, they kept talking it up. Hey, this is the first time we've ever had a 6-man tag on Primetime Live. But, I mean, every match is a first time when you're a new company. I mean, the first time they have a handicap match, are they going to make a big deal about that? The first time they do like an intergender match, are they going to make a big deal about that? I don't know. This match, putting this match together just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Clearly the tag teams have something to fight for, but as a 6-man tag, it just didn't make sense. DK, well, I mean, what did you think?
This is where I felt the show started to descend into a independent version of AEW. And I don't really watch AEW. I've seen a couple of shows here and there. Again, get most of my information from it from another podcast or YouTube channel, and I don't understand why a tag team that was talking about what a good tag team they were, even though they've lost 2 out of 3, and there's such wrestle on a tag team that the tag team champion from somewhere, and you would think that that's what they would want. They want to wrestle these champions, beat them so that they can be in line for a title match down the line, or if not against them, against maybe one of the other champion teams. I don't have too much objection to bringing in other titles, but be careful not to dilute. I mean, we already have the United Network Tag Team Champions, the NWA Tag Team Championship match later in the show. They continue to work with the NWA. We might see more of that. And then I also don't like wrestlers booking the matches. I don't understand why, all of a sudden Will Allday shows up, and I guess at the Memphis thing he wrestled this Cam, but I thought the announcers referenced that. And so, but they didn't reference it until during the match, so none of that makes sense. None of it really made sense. I didn't understand why a tag team would want to turn it to a 6-man tag team match. I could have cared less. That was the first 6-man tag team match on serious here. I mean, 6-man tag team matches aren't uncommon. So that they had one, big deal.
Well,
we had a singles match too, and so, go ahead with what you were going to say.
I was just going to say, on top of that, like, a couple things I wanted to talk about. First is, if there was a 6-man tag team title in United Wrestling Network, then okay. Now you got a reason for me to care. I just don't feel like there was enough storyline leading up to this kind of a match. And this is where the show kind of is going to hurt if it doesn't have consistent storylines. And I know it's hard to have consistent storylines when you have an ever-changing, ever-evolving roster. But I just feel like there needs to be a reason for things, and it's not just, oh hey, look, we're all showing off our belts. Let's have a 6-man tag match. It just really didn't make a lot of sense to me. It didn't gel. The match itself was okay. And as I saw in the chat room, I saw Dave Scooby say that the 6-man tag match just seemed like a match to throw everyone in there, and that might have been the case. And again, I don't hate the idea of trying to get as many people on TV as possible, but why not just book it that way? Just say, okay, we're going to do a 6-man tag match. The Real Money Brothers win that match when they connect with their Full Nelson Flatliner combo. The match was all over the place. Will Alday is a fun cruiserweight to watch, a fun junior heavyweight to watch. He's not exactly my cup of tea, but I see the appeal to him. I see why people enjoy his matches. I really do like 4 Minutes of Heat, and I would like to see the Primetime Live kind of put a greater emphasis on them as a tag team. I mean, there are so many good tag teams on Primetime Live that we have potential challengers for both the NWA tag team titles and the United Wrestling Network tag team titles. So again, I'm okay with that. This match didn't really do it for me. And then the other part I wanted to bring up, DK, you mentioned like, hey, the belts. It seems like there's a lot of belts for a company that already has them, and I agree. I think if Primetime Live didn't feature any championships, right, then I would understand why you would have the Defy Tag Team Champions there defending, or the Ring of Honor Texas Champion defending. But in a time and place where you have your own set of tag team champions, you have your own TV champion, you're going to crown a world champion, and then you have a host of NWA champions, and then West Coast Pro Wrestling and Arizona and Hollywood Heritage. I mean, you're right. There's an abundance of championship belts, and I think maybe an overabundance. And I wouldn't mind if some of those titles disappeared. And I wouldn't mind if we didn't see some of those titles on television after a while. So that's just my... Go ahead.
More than I see. I mean, you can bring in champions from any organization you want to. But, you don't always have to bring them in with their belts and declare them champions. The other thing, just getting to the match itself, you're more generous than I am a little bit. Well, first to go on something that Ryan says in the chat room, you almost, Will Alday showing up, that was one thing, but when, Real Money Brothers are like, just randomly going, oh, we'll pick you. Well, yeah, let's find out. We're going to pick somebody who we just kind of see standing up there. That makes sense. But the match itself started a trend again for the night that I didn't particularly like. A lot of outside the ring stuff. A lot of an idiot referee who, everybody's in the ring and he's standing there befuddled, doesn't count, he doesn't do anything. Why? Again, kind of an independent AEW. It's just a lot of moves for the sake of being moves. And it started a trend for the night that I didn't particularly care for it. So what happened after that?
So next we get we get Vipress versus Lacey Ryan. Now, their last match I thought was particularly good. The promos that Vipress cut, and I said this about Vipress the last time she was on, she just seems very disheveled and uninterested. And I don't know if that's part of the gimmick. I don't know if that's her just, this camera is bothering me, sorry. I don't know if that's just part of her gimmick, but she just seems to not care. And that's okay. That's okay, but it makes the promos kind of difficult to enjoy. But she had mentioned that she was robbed, that the match should have been thrown out. But Lacey Ryan's having a great year. Besides the matches in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, where she's currently up on Heather Monroe in their best of 7. She just got back from Mission Pro Wrestling, where she made it to the finals, winning 2 matches at the last show that MPW put on. She's going to be there in the finals for the Run It show for Mission Pro Wrestling, where she's going to be facing La Rosa Negra for the Mission Pro Women's Champ, or I guess they just call it the Mission Pro Championship. It's all women's promotion. She's having a good year. She looks great in the ring. I like everything about her except for the promos. Again, very wooden and laconic. And I know promos are only just a small percentage of wrestling, but the greats are able to get over on the microphone. And I feel like if Lacey Ryan is going to get to that next level, her promos are going to have to improve. All in all, I think this was, again, I don't feel like this match was as good as their last outing. I felt like having Vipress lose this match does nothing for her in terms of building her up as a potential star for the United Wrestling Network. It just proved what we all knew from last week, that Lacey Ryan is a dominant competitor. DKM, what were your thoughts on this match?
It was the first rematch that they've done, and I'm confused as to why they would pick this as the first rematch. The first match between the two of them was good. I enjoyed it. And I thought both of them looked good at the end of the match. Even Vipress losing. So, hey, that was a good thing. But then I kind of bring it back. This match was not as good as the first match. They kind of played up an injury angle during the match, which again is going to be a theme in the night. Again, there's a lot of outside the ring stuff, and I'm trying to remember. I think this is the match. I might have slept since day, but I can't guarantee it. But the thing with the referee was counting them outside the ring, and I believe, what's her name? Ryan, right?
Yeah, Lacey Ryan.
Went and stopped Vipress while she was on the ground, and then fell, and then the referee started the count over again. And it's like going, what? Why? And so, because it wasn't as good as their first match, I was kind of left at the end when Vipress walked again going, well, okay, she's shot for now. And I guess she's scheduled to come back either this upcoming week or the week after and facing somebody else. But, it's hard to get a person to come back after 2 losses. Again, this is kind of an AEW trope. They bring in all these big monster guys. They give them 2 wins against nobodies. They put them in against the top talent, and they lose. And then you got to rehabilitate them. Well, I've just seen Vipress lose cleanly twice. Okay. Now, why do I want to see her on a pay-per-view again?
Yeah. And to your point, now with Vipress, and again, she's not bad. I want you guys to understand, we're not burying Vipress because she's actually really good. But the booking now makes it so that how do you build her back up? Because if you put her back on Primetime Live, let's say you put her against somebody like Serena Deep, or Allison Kaye or Thunder Rosa. Like, the intrigue is gone. I'm just going to think it's a squash match. You know, you put her in the ring with Heather Monroe, or you put her in the ring with Raze. I don't think she's going to put on a competitive match. I think she's going to roll over and lose. So I feel like it's about to, for somebody like Viperous, you know, with the 2 losses back-to-back to Lacey Ryan, well, she shouldn't be on Primetime Live again until something changes maybe in Hollywood. And that's another thing, and I want to just interrupt this because we didn't talk about it on the pre-party, but DKM, did you know that Allison Danger is now helping to produce Championship Wrestling from Hollywood? The longtime women's wrestler, sister of Steve Corino, is now helping out with the wrestling in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which I think is going to have a positive impact on their women's division, which will hopefully have a spillover effect onto Primetime Live. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a good thing anytime you can bring in somebody with that type of experience and a pedigree to help, you know, whether she works with only the women or the women and the men, you know. We're losing the people that kind of understood what wrestling was. And, you know, I hear a lot of people sometimes, you know, they'll say it about Jim Cornette or they'll say about other people, oh, that tired old way doesn't work anymore. It doesn't draw anymore. I'm sorry, have you seen the numbers? Wrestling's not drawing right now. Don't try to feed me some BS about it being a golden age or, you know, renaissance or whatever. Wrestling viewership's at an all-time low. AEW just had their 1-year anniversary show, which they kind of, you know, stacked a little bit. It didn't even draw 800,000. Okay, this was a show that had 1.5 million people for their first episode, and they have lost everybody but their hardcore fans. Raw is drawing under 2 million. Sometimes it blows just over 1.6. Some of their lowest ratings ever have been within this last year. And you can blame COVID to an extent, but if you put on good product, we'll get over it. And so don't tell me wrestling's at a renaissance. Don't tell me that what's being put out there these days isn't working. And so we need to find some of these veterans who can come back in and say, hey, you know, when we were selling out 5, 6, 7, 10,000 seat arenas, you know, this is what we were doing.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's kind of funny because you said, like, you know, back in the day, you know, it wasn't that long ago that I was sitting in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Orleans Arena, not for Ring of Honor, not for, you know, a WWE show or an NXT show or an AEW show, or Impact. It was for essentially what was Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It was the NWA Pro Wrestling Showcase. They called it the Coupa de Lucha, where they featured tag teams from, you know, around the United States, as well as, you know, some of the wrestlers from Wrestling Society X, some luchadors, and they sold that place out. I mean, it was a 15,000 seat venue arena, and yeah, about a third of, you know, 2/3 of the arena were blocked off, but you had 5,000 people in attendance for a show that was headlined by, like, you know, Billy Kidman and I think it was Hijo de Santo versus, like, Blue Demon and Super Porky. I mean, it was crazy what kind of cards that they were drawing just even a few years ago. And I mean, this was a Dave Marquez production. It boggles my mind that there hasn't been some sort of return to form where you're not seeing these smaller size wrestling companies back in these larger size venues. And I don't know why it's not happening, other than just not the interest.
Well, I mean, that's exactly why it's not happening. I mean, wrestling has changed the audience that it's seeking to an extent. and it's not an audience that's going to be big enough to sustain it in the long term. You know the old joke. The best way to get $1 million in wrestling is to start with film.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, people forget that all their favorite indie promotions, all their large indie promotions, even if they've run for years, most of them are running because the owner is just that dedicated, not because they can run. The reason Ring of Honor got bought out by a television conglomerate was because Gary Silkin was losing his ass. Well, he was.
Yeah.
He says it. And so, you got to start doing things. You got to start doing things that are going to appeal to people. I went to a show here in my hometown, and it probably drew around 1,000. And they drew around 1,000 because the Von Erich boys were on the card. They weren't even the main event. But they were on the card. And when you go, well, how do I know it was them? Well, easy. When everybody was out at their table to sign autographs, most people had like 3 people in line. They had a line that was stretching all the way down the hallway to the door.
That's great.
I mean, still Texas, it's still Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. That name still had value, still has value.
Right.
And so that's why it was. But when I was looking around at this high school gym, at the 1,000 people or so that were there, do you know what I didn't see? I didn't see teenagers. I didn't see high school students. I didn't see college students. I saw old wrestling fans who remember the world-class days and their grandkids. That's who was there.
And it's funny you mentioned that because being in Atlanta, Georgia for the NWA Power tapings, and I was only at the first set. I was only at the ones in October. And same thing. It wasn't a bunch of young smarks. It wasn't a bunch of guys. I mean, there were some guys that looked like me. I mean, Gary Horn was in the audience. I think Dr. Robert Stinson was in the audience. But essentially, there was a lot of an older generation of wrestling fans there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to, if those are the folks that are coming to your shows, you're certainly going to have to appeal to that audience. And, that's one thing that NWA Power did very well in the very beginning. And it's one thing that, there is no audience for Primetime Live. There's no live crowd. The only audience that they have are the people who are paying $7.99 every episode on Fight TV or Direct TV or on In Demand to check this show out. And that's problematic because you don't really know exactly what's selling and what's not, especially with bundle packages. You don't know who's buying these shows for what reason. So a lot of this is just kind of hard to read the tea leaves. But I mean, to the point where we started with all this is that certainly the aspect of professional wrestling needs to maybe evolve even again to kind of go back to maybe more simpler times, the less complex times. And I just saw a few comments here that I wanted to get to in the live chat. Ryan Romano, who I know is a big Thunder Rosa fan, he says like Exhibit A, Thunder Rosa and Mission Pro. There's such good talent out there, and yeah, he's right. Mission Pro is doing the right thing. They're starting off small, and hopefully this leads to bigger and better things for both Thunder Rosa and Mission Pro. But I mean, they're still in its infancy stage. It's the second show. Wrestling with the MMA says, wrestling now reminds me of skateboarding back in the day. There's a lot of people wearing the gear, but only a few of them are actually doing it. And I mean, that's pretty spot on right there because, I mean, we can all turn on wrestling. Like, look, it's getting super competitive now because besides what you have on Monday nights with the WWE, despite what you have on AEW and Impact, and now Ring of Honor, who's been back doing their pure wrestling tournament, they're going back to the regular format soon, and then you've got MLW, who's kicking off, I think, right now. I think they are on YouTube right now. I mean, there's so much wrestling that's coming out there, so you have to have something different. You have to have a way to grab an audience, and it's going to take some forward thinking to get back to that. Do you agree?
I did agree. Now, one thing I did like about this particular episode is they at least had an interview with Davey Boy Smith.
Thank you. Hey, great.
Is that the name you're using for him, by the way? Because sometimes he uses Harry Smith, sometimes he uses Davey Boy Smith Jr.
I think he's going by Davey Boy Smith Jr. And again, this is where there was a lot of confusion because, I personally believe a talent like Davey Boy Smith Jr., who was originally booked for that tournament, is a game changer. I think not just the family name that he has, but his legacy in professional wrestling. I mean, we've talked about it, his time in the WWE. He's a tag team champion. He's a former NWA World Tag Team Champion. The IWGP tag titles with Lance Hoyt, Lance Archer in AEW. The Global Honored Crown Tag Team Champions from Noah. I mean, this guy is a well-traveled athlete. He competes for Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. I mean, he practices jiu-jitsu. He's not just a pro wrestler. He's really well versed. And I think somebody of his stature in this tournament really meant a lot. In fact, he had my pick as the guy that was going to win this tournament. Now, it was unfortunate that he wasn't able to compete for whatever reason. They didn't really specify. He showed up this week, which was kind of unexplained. But he did cut an interview and said that he'd be back in about, what did he say, 2 weeks?
A few weeks is what he said. I don't know.
A few weeks. Well, it just so happens in a few weeks, next week there's no tournament matches. The following week, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, they're going to crown a new world champion. And I wouldn't be surprised if shortly after that match, if we don't see Davey Boy Smith Jr. back at Primetime Live and challenging either Mike Bennett or Chris Dickinson, whoever wins that title for the World Championship match. And what do you think about that, DK? Are you excited to see that? And what did you think of the interview?
Well, now that I've sneezed.
God bless you.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him. For some reason, my phone's trying to go dark. I was excited to see him. I'm excited to see how they use him and stuff like that. He was also my pick to win the title. I thought he was the best person in the tournament to win it from a getting attention and being able to draw people and having a chance to kind of be named up in the same level as the other promotions champions. I don't see it again here. But yeah, I was glad to see it. I'm glad to see him, and I hope he gets the chance to challenge for and hopefully even win the title. What was the next match? Did they have any more?
Yeah. The morale the beatings will continue until morale improves. Next up, we have the NWA World Tag Team Champions. Primetime Live defending those beautiful throwbacks to 1985. The NWA World Tag Team titles. Again, Eli Drake and James Storm won these titles back at Hard Times, defeating the likes of the Rock and Roll Express and the Wild Card. That would be Thomas Latimer and Royce Isaacs, if you guys can remember all the way back in January. They had one title defense before NWA Power went on permanent hiatus. maybe not permanent, but we'll see. And that was they defended against Ring of Honor's the Bouncers. And so this was the first time we got to see James Storm and Eli Drake in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, or excuse me, Primetime Live as a tag team. We got to see them work together. They still look great. Their promo in the beginning was still great. However, this match really took a turn because, the much anticipated question mark could not be at the show. He was never going to be at the show. I hate to break it to you guys. This was all a ruse perpetrated by Aaron Stevens. He got all of us. Aaron Stevens brings in his partner J.R. Kratos, who he even openly mocked the fans and said, "Prove he is not the question mark," which, again, we can't really prove that. But we knew what was going to happen. And in the world of professional wrestling, as a fan, as somebody who pontificates about pro wrestling, as someone who's spent the better part of 15 years writing and speaking on professional wrestling, everyone knew what was going to happen in this match. And spontaneity, of course, is fun. And I guess that's where you bringing in Kratos was spontaneous, but we knew that the tag titles were going to change hands. Everyone just assumed it would be the question mark and not JR Kratos. Now, I know a lot of people were saying, hey man, this was bait and switch because I was expecting to see the question mark. He's not here. I feel ripped off. And to those people, I get it. I feel your outrage, but remember, they always put that at the end of the byline on those press announcements, is that card is subject to change. Question mark was never going to be on the show, guys. It just wasn't. The gimmick is still in Monrovia. The wrestler is from parts unknown. I don't know, guys. I don't believe the question mark will be a part of the NWA going forward. Who knows? I know he's beloved by many and hated by a few. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the thing about the ever-changing National Wrestling Alliance. The roster that started, 365 days ago, or 360 days ago, or whatever you want to say, when they started in Atlanta for the original Power tapings, that roster has turned over so much that there's probably about 4 guys still there who were there on day one that are still there. And, if you're a fan of the question mark, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. If you're like Kikuchi, you're happy that he's gone. DK, what were your thoughts on this bait and switch of the question mark?
Oh, well, man, anybody is better than the question mark. So I, of course, was happy for it as far as that was concerned. Look, I don't know why they didn't, from the beginning, say it was going to be something different. All they had to do was say the question mark, stuck in, some country somewhere for some reason. And that Stevens found a new partner and he's going to challenge with it. And, it probably would have been more interesting to find who was Kratos. The sad thing is that this just kind of shows the state of those tag team titles at the moment. I was really, really hoping for, a little fun swerve, so to speak, and Drake and Storm retaining, maybe to lose them in a couple of weeks or something. Obviously, Storm's made a couple of appearances there. He's an independent, but he's not signed anywhere. He's free agent. So I felt like that could have been a possibility. Now we kind of got a tag team that had never tagged before, but these are your world champions. And, as far as the roster is concerned and turnover, look, if you're not putting on shows, you don't need a roster. And so the NWA is not putting on shows, whether you agree with it or disagree with it or whatever you think. So I'm sure part of the cost-cutting thing is you just let people's contracts expire.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't think it's personal on anybody's part. I don't think it's personal against the NWA, and I don't think it's personal against, the wrestlers. I think it's just the contracts come up, and why am I going to sign you again if I'm not putting on shows? And look, there's plenty of independent talent out there. If the day comes where they decide to put on shows again and do something, they'll sign. They never had a big roster, so they'll sign 5, 6, 7 guys. Hopefully they don't take this opportunity to look for an actual tag team to start challenging for the tag team titles. I mean, I don't know what the plans are. We know the women's title's kind of tied up in AEW for now. Hey, that's a good thing, I guess. It's something. It's staying active. It's staying, out where people can see it. Hopefully the Trevor Murdoch will come back at the national title and they can find someone to challenge him. Look, when it comes to Nick Aldis, I don't know what's going on. Hopefully he'll start defending more. If he's unwilling to defend more, then hopefully they'll find somebody who is willing to defend more.
Well, and
as the old saying goes, it's time to shit or get off the pot. Pardon my language there, but
Well, and so I want to just deconstruct what you said there because there's two different parts.
I do have one thing, Jay.
Yeah.
Did you know that during the outside the ring beatdowns at the very beginning that the match had not officially started? I'm not sure if you knew that because I'm not sure the announcers brought it up more than 18 times.
They did that for a reason, and we won't get.
I just want you to know that match had not officially started while they were out there beating the crap out of each other, and this was some of the stuff I was talking about earlier. And kind of that AEW thing, we had a lot of outside the ring stuff. Even after the match officially started, we had outside the ring stuff. And
well, and again, that served a purpose. Again, the announcers wanted to make sure you knew what was going on, but there was a reason for that. But we won't get into it. But I do want to get into what you brought up when NWA Power returns. What is it going to look like? I mean, look, they don't even really have to sign anybody, guys. Like, this is between you and me right here, right? Like, they have a roster right now that consists of the Pope, Trevor Murdoch, Stevens and Kratos. I'm assuming Serena Deep would be obligated to appear on Power if it were to start tomorrow. They've got Thomas Latimer, they've got Thunder Rosa, they've got Camille, and they've got Nick Aldis, they've got Tim Storm. I'm going to tell you right now, they could bring in a flock of jabronis. And the NWA faithful are going to tune in because there's something magical about the NWA. And even though it can do wrong, it never stays on the wrong side for very long. And fans will find a way to find it and to get involved in it, to get invested in it. Look, Eddie Kingston wasn't under contract when he wrestled for NWA Power. Nor was Homicide. And nor was Trevor Murdoch. And a lot of these guys who were under contract, I mean, even now that they're out of contract, it doesn't mean that they're done with the NWA. I wouldn't be surprised if Allison Kaye showed back up. Also, Eli Drake is still under contract. I mean, look, they got a money match right there when they start back up again. Now, free of responsibility, free of the tag team titles, Eli Drake can challenge Nick Aldis for the 10 pounds of gold, and that's going to get people to watch. It's going to get people to talk about it. The promos alone will be gold, and you know when 10 pounds of gold kicks off with Eli Drake and Nick Aldis that people are going to be tuning in. No doubt about it. And we all know that's a match that's going to happen because what are their options? They can't do Tim Storm versus Nick Aldis for a third time now. It's kind of ran its course. And Marty Scurll unfortunately had some set of circumstances that came up in the middle of the summer, and I don't know that you'll see him involved with the NWA going forward. So, I mean, they're going to have to be creative, but like I said, there's many already really good, talented people on that roster that even if they bring in just a few nobodies, we're all going to go back and watch because that's what they do. That's what they do. And I see a lot of people in the room. Dave Scooby says, bring back the War Kings. All for the War Kings, by the way. Crimson and Jack Dane. I would love to see them take on Aaron Stevens and Kratos and take those belts right off of them. This tag team match, I did want to point out that they did the champions kind of dirty. They did the outside, the hit with the chair, the low blow, but ultimately we have new tag team champions, and there will be a further progression of the storyline. Whether that be the question mark coming back to NWA Power, whether that be whatever happens, the NWA has the opportunity now to go forward with all set of new champions, minus the world's heavyweight champion, and do whatever they choose to do. And of course, I don't think that's going to happen now. I think it's going to happen in 2021. We'll see how it goes. That brings us to the main event. The man who is basically held together by bubblegum and scotch tape, and I'm talking about Sean Daivari, taking on the other guy that's held together by bubblegum and scotch tape in Mike Bennett. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've seen Mike Bennett as the role of underdog. When he took on Kratos, he was, he was smaller and more nimble and, more injured. But he ended up getting the victory there when he faced off against, gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Who did he face in the title tournament? When he faced Kevin Martinson, which was a really good match. That was kind of like a matchup of two guys who were the most beaten up, and Kevin Martinson, having taken a stage dive in the week prior, kind of put him at a disadvantage where Bennett was able to capitalize. This match wasn't bad. The psychology of the match kind of bothered me a little bit when you have Mike Bennett hitting the spear right out the back and jacking up his shoulder and unable to do just a simple pile driver. To me, like, okay, then why in the world would this guy go for a spear for a second time, a third time, or a fourth time? It just didn't make any sense to me. Being in that ring, I understand the philosophy as a wrestler. You have your core set of moves, but I know it's not the same. But I wrestled in high school, and I had my move set that I like to follow. I used to like to do the lateral. I would like to do the the leg rides. But if I had an opponent who could keep me from doing my leg ride, well, then I'd have to change up my tactics and how I'm going to take somebody down. So knowing that as a high school athlete, I would imagine somebody who's accomplished in the ring as Mike Bennett, a former X Division champion, a former IWGP Tag Team champion, Ring of Honor Tag Team champion, WWE 24/7 champion. I would assume that this guy would know how to change up his offense, but he kept going back to that spear, which, look, when it connected, it was useful. It was effective, but it did almost as much to put him down as it did Daivari. All in all, the match was still good. It told a good story, but this is the kind of match that I wanted to be great. I wanted to sing Mike Bennett's praise because, honestly, I'm backing Bennett. I want Bennett to win this title. I want it to be meaningful. I want the redemption story to come full circle. I want Maria to be there, and I want him to hold the belt up and say, "Yo, Adrian, we did it." But I just kind of felt like this match fell flat on that. And DK, your face says it all. What did you think of this match?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what match you watched, because this was terrible.
I didn't think it was terrible, but okay. Let's hear
it. And part of the reason it was terrible, again, has to do with circumstances. 3rd out of 5 matches, we have an injury angle going.
Yeah.
Okay. It's one thing to overdo everything every week. You overdo it in a night. He's injured on the first move. To be so injured you can't do anything. And again, another match. So now he's injured. He can't do much. Daivari feeling better, but, he's not sure he can do much, so he's falling apart. So we got, hey, this is your world title semifinal. Two beat-up guys who can't wrestle because they're falling apart. Let's think this thing through a bit here. Well, and again, it spills out of the ring. They spend way too much time out of the ring.
Can I ask you a question, DK?
You can ask me any question you want to.
Did you think when this match started that because of Daivari's long laundry list of injuries that he had, that perhaps maybe he wouldn't make it to the ring and that Davey Boy Smith Jr. would become the alternate to face Mike Bennett, would get that first round match?
I was hoping.
Yeah, same. I was too. Okay.
I don't know that Daivari had. I guess he cut a promo at the beginning, which are obviously taped at another time. And he wasn't featured at any other point during the show. I was kind of hoping, and also because the match, there was a little bit of timing issue. Our main event is going on 15 minutes before the end of the show. So I thought, well, it might make more sense. You get somebody like, Davey Boy Smith out who's fresh and rested and stuff like that, going in against somebody who's all kind of beat up, and then, you kind of protect a guy on a loss that way. Well, he wasn't planning on him. He was much bigger. He was, refreshed. He hadn't had to go through a first tournament, round or whatever. But just getting back on this match, too much outside the ring. The pile driver on the plastic table was, I didn't get it. The more his shoulder was beat up. Apparently, what happened is on the first spear, his shoulder was knocked out of socket or something like that. And so every time it was beat on, or every spear he had tried after that, resulted in it going back in place. Because as the match went on, his shoulder hurt him less and less.
It was the adrenaline.
So yeah, sure. So after the pile driver on the table, after they spent way too long outside the ring, he brings him back in. Is that when he hit the other spear that actually connected? But I know he did like another pile driver, and then that ended the match. All I could think of was, thank God this show's over. And here's what was hard for me, is that I really praised this show about being wrestling, about being the type of wrestling that we wanted to see. For those of us who say we don't like WWE-style wrestling, that this was the alternative. It ain't AEW, it's just another WWE show. Impact still sucks. Ring of Honor does some good stuff. I haven't watched MLW since they've returned yet. And so, but this was putting on good wrestling matches. And I was so excited after that first one, and we had a good wrestling match. And then the rest of it just didn't do it. It was not good wrestling. Maybe it was good sports entertainment. I don't know. I don't like sports entertainment, so I can't be unbiased in that. This show did not do it for me. I have faith that next week they'll return back to the wrestling roots. I'm not giving up, not, storming off, taking my balls, going home.
Hey, leave your balls alone.
Exactly. You start talking about it. I don't know. I was glad this show was over. I did not like it. I did not think it was good. I did not think the layout for the match was good. I don't know why it was done. I don't know why 4 of the matches were done the way they were done, or why they were in one, the rematch, why it was on the show. And so, here's your mulligan. Come back with an excellent show next week, folks.
So, as I said, for the better part of 15 years, I've been an NWA apologist. And as part of being an NWA apologist, I've always been a Dave Marquez apologist. And that means that didn't matter if it was the Tokon TV that they did for New Japan Pro Wrestling back in 2008. It didn't matter if it was, or 2004. 2005. It didn't matter if it was the NWA Pro Wrestling Showcase that was on MAV TV, or the NWA Showcase that was on Colors, or NWA Hollywood that was on KDOC. I've always stood up for Dave's work. I've always acknowledged the opportunities that the show had, and I've always tried to spin things in a positive direction because, again, I do feel like what Dave Marquez, what Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, what Primetime Live has always been geared towards people like me. And the studio effect of wrestling, the style of wrestling, I've always thought this is what Dave did was appealing to the audience of me and people like me. This was not that. This was not the high style, high profile wrestling that I'd grown accustomed to in the past few weeks with Primetime Live. We've said on every single episode, like, hey, even when the show had its weak moments, it was still pretty damn good. I did not feel like this was the best offering that Primetime Live has given. Now, I won't be as harsh as DKM, because there were elements of the main event that I really got into. But again, things like the whole shoulder injury and being able to work through it. I don't know if you guys have ever had a dislocated shoulder. I've never had a dislocated shoulder, but I have met people and have seen people in a ring who have dislocated the shoulder, and that's it, man. You're not sparing that dude again. I mean, that arm is just dead. And the amount of pain that you're in. So, I mean, that kind of distracted me from the match. It took me out of the match, and it wasn't as enjoyable, especially when you had that first round matchup between Chris Dickinson, it was semifinal, but the first of the semifinals, Dickinson and Rosser, which, they had that injured angle, but it was done in a lot better fashion. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of Fred Rosser or a byproduct of Chris Dickinson, but I just really felt like there was such a peak and valley with how good the opening match was versus how not good the closing match of the night was. And I don't know, out of all the episodes, this is the one that if I didn't buy the bundle, had I not been hyping this show up for the last month, I probably would have skipped it. But with that being said, I still really very much enjoyed the Chris Dickinson match. I'm glad to see some of the storyline taking shape. We now have our final set for the next for the world title with Dickinson and Mike Bennett. And it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't really matter who wins, because I think you've got a good guy to represent your brand with either competitor. But yeah, it wasn't the best. And I would be less than authentic if I told you anything but that. So DKM, it's getting late. I know we were planning to go about 45 minutes, and we're almost into an hour and a half. So let's wrap it up. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to put on this match? Anything you're looking forward to next week?
Closing thoughts on the show is what I said earlier. Hey, I've given you a mulligan on this one. I'm hoping next week that you put on, some good in-ring wrestling matches again. The good thing and the negative thing about me is I tell it as I see it. And, If I like it, I say I like it. If I don't like it, I say I don't like it. You know, it's not. I'm not here to please the promoters or the wrestlers by telling them how great everything was if I don't believe it. I'm the one paying my money.
Yeah.
So, shut up and take it like a man. But just, ultimately, like I said, I'm not dropping the show. They put on plenty of good shows. I'm expecting plenty of good shows in the future. That's really all I got to say for this.
Well, I know that I know for next week that we have. I think a lot of people are going to be excited about this one. Lindsay Snow had a great title challenge with Thunder Rosa for the Women's Championship at MPW, Mission Pro Wrestling. She was on their inaugural event challenging Thunder Rosa. She also was on the Circled Squared episode that never made it to air for the National Wrestling Alliance. So Lindsay Snow will make her debut on Primetime Live, challenging one of my favorites, Ruby Reyes. And this one's going to be a tough call because Lindsay Snow's a badass, but I got to cheer for my hometown girl, Reyes. We also have Danny Limelight. He joined us last week. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you go through and look through the archive and check that one out because that was a lot of fun. He's going to be returning. No opponent announced yet for him. And I'm trying to look up the rest of the card, but I just can't seem to find it here in front of me. Do you know any more matches, or is that all that you know too?
Again, I might or might not have slept since the show. I saw the matches. So what you said is what I remember.
Oh, and Ray Rosas will be defending the Hollywood Heritage Championship again. So that's 3 matches. No opponent announced for Ray. No opponent announced for Danny Limelight. We'll see how that all plays out. Maybe they're facing each other. We'll see. But that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Again, I appreciate each and every one of you joining us every Thursday, every Tuesday. DK is asking you to give us a thumbs up if you like the show, whether you're watching on Twitch or if you're watching on YouTube. Please give us a thumbs up, a follow, a like, a subscribe. We do definitely appreciate that. We are trying to give you guys some, a varying viewpoint of what the NWA is doing, what Primetime Live is doing, and week in and week out, we're just trying to give you some fun, some escapism, if you will, from the cruel realities of this world that we live in. Just a couple of guys talking about pro wrestling. We will be back next week with the modern day hero, the former World Junior Heavyweight Champion Kevin Frazier. DKM, if folks want to follow you on the socials, how can they do that?
If you want to get my opinion on wrestling, boxing, MMA, and other combat sports like politics, or the DC universe, you can follow me on Twitter at DKMFWTX.
And of course, guys, you can follow us at the Alliance Blog on all your social medias, and that's including, I think they call it TikTok. That's where the kids are at, right? TikTok, Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. We're not gonna go to the, what's that other what's the new one? We won't go into that. You can follow us everywhere that social media is social and talks about wrestling. Again, at the Alliance Blog. Plus, we have new merchandise available. Make sure you check out our Twitter links and our Facebook links because we'll be posting more and more new graphic tees. Is that what it's called? Graphic tees. The new Alliance Blog T-shirt is pretty sharp. It was designed by our friends over at this is the NWA podcast. Hey, it's Will. So I hope you guys will check that out. And again, we'll be here on, I'll be here Friday with Hey, it's Will to talk the NWA I messed up the name. We call it the Friday Hot Tag. You could join Will and I as we talk about the hot topics of pro wrestling. And then on Tuesday, we'll be back for another pre-party. So I hope you guys will join us. Again, thank you for making us part of your wrestling viewing habits. Until next time, I ask that you guys get positive and stay positive, and we'll see you at the matches. You have a good night now.